Today we are going through the decade of the 2000s. So that is the years 2000 through to 2009. Of course, this is a subjective list. It's my personal choices for the top 30 songs. And the general rule is that each artist can only really appear once. If they are going to appear more than once, it has to be songs from different albums of theirs. But largely, trying to keep it varied, trying to mix up what you are going to hear and maybe like suggest some songs that you've not heard of. But anyway, we'll be keeping an eye on the chat, of course. So if you've got any questions, if you've got any songs or artists that you think might appear, obviously right now on the screen you can see 9 of the artists that are going to appear, but there's plenty more that in store. So make some predictions and some suggestions, and at the end we'll discuss anything maybe that I missed out on my list, anything that should have been there but wasn't. So anyway, let's crack into the very first artist on the list, and that is Coldplay. Now, I know that Coldplay is an artist that some people find is a little bit... Coldplay are a little bit divisive. That's what I want to say. And they've become more divisive through the years. When they first came out, I think they were reasonably cool, maybe. But quickly they became far too mainstream to be considered cool. And now they're more like a poor man's Radiohead, perhaps. But I still have a sweet spot for Coldplay, particularly the earlier stuff. So this song here, In My Place, was from Coldplay's second album, Rush of Blood to the Head, sorry. And that's the same album that has Clocks on it, The Scientist, all that stuff. It's a good album. But this is probably my favourite Coldplay song. It just has that great but simple groove from the drums, and a great texture and a great atmosphere. And let's just have a listen to it. Let me know, by the way, if the music's too quiet or my talking's too quiet, that sort of thing. Hello, Raynor. Welcome to the chat. And Who's91, welcome to the chat as well. Green Day will be making an appearance. You can start speculating on how far up the list I'll be.
In my place, were lines that I couldn't change. I was lost, oh yeah. And I was lost. Crossed lines I shouldn't have crossed. Sing it out to me, come back and sing. In my place,
Yeah, there you go. Coldplay, In My Place. Number 30 on my list of the top 30 songs of the 2000s. The decade running from the year 2000 to the year 2009. That was Coldplay. Probably a mandatory choice on a list like this, I think. Let's move on. So, number 29 on the list. It's almost another Coldplay band. It's like the Scottish Coldplay. It's Travis. Both Coldplay and Travis were given this label of like post-Britpop, where they're using a lot of the sensibilities and styles of artists like Oasis and Blur, but not the same kind of like lyrical themes and overtly, British and Beatles-inspired vibe. But yeah, anyway, Flowers in the Window, one of the many good songs by Travis. I think maybe Travis are slightly overlooked, I think. I don't know, what do you think? Have you heard of Travis before? And if so, are you from outside of the UK? Because I don't really know how well known Travis are beyond the UK. But this is a beautiful song of theirs. It's called Flowers in the Window. Travis. Hello, David Defendifer. Welcome to the stream. Rush of Blood to the Head is a good song as well. Coldplay tune. But yeah, let me know if you've heard of Travis, and let me know if this is your favourite Travis song.
When I first held you, I was cold. A melting snowman, I was told.
Raynor from Argentina says he's heard of Travis.
No one there to hold before I swore
another band that I'll be interested to know if you know. This is a band called Foals. This was their first album. I think they actually went on to become more mainstream. This first album was quite alternative, but then by the third or fourth album, they were starting to get some radio hits. But I'm still not really sure how popular they are outside of the UK. They're from Oxford, in the UK, and on this particular first album, they had quite I want to say math rock, like very rhythmic, a lot of clean guitars, a lot of delay pedals, but it wasn't particularly mathy because it wasn't like loads of weird time signatures. It just had sort of the aesthetics of math rock. But I really love them, particularly this first album, and I actually happened to see them live at Hyde Park. I think they were supporting Blur, which was a bit of a weird choice for supporting Blur, but anyway, I really enjoyed them. Oscar saying they haven't heard of Foals. Yeah, well, they're a great band. I think maybe a song which some people might know of theirs is a song called My Number, but once again, it's going to be a song that you'd have to listen to recognise. Anyway, let's have a listen to this. This is Two Steps Twice by Foals from their debut album. Polyrhythm going on there on the hi-hat. It's a bit mathy. I like with this song how the texture just builds, so adding like extra layer, extra layer, extra layer. To answer your question in the comments, the list is just 2000 and 2009. But yeah, I appreciate that's not always clear when it's 2010. The texture has been building up, almost like a full texture here, and then it kind of climaxes. And then we fall down to this new part of the song with a very thin texture again, laying a new foundation so we can then build up again. Yeah, I can hear the Robert Smith in the vocal, pure influence. So it's almost the same process happening here. We're once again building up, and then it's going to climax. But this time it will be like the true peak of the song. Quite unusual songwriting, like the structure is really quite unusual. So that's Foals. Maybe the least well-known of the artists I've played so far, so maybe I've introduced you there to something. Their first album is definitely the one. If you like that, this album's called Antidotes. It had that sound to it. The second album, it kind of diversified a bit, and by the third album, they'd really not gone mainstream, but they'd become very radio-friendly at that point, so I was less keen. But anyway, Keen's another band that could be on this list. Number 27, much more De La Soul. De La Soul are potentially my favourite hip hop group. I'm not a massive hip hop connoisseur. I'm quite picky with my hip hop. But De La Soul is the exact type of hip hop I like, where it's very groovy and quite fun, and often based on like old soul samples, that sort of thing. This song actually opens with a soul sample, which I didn't realise until recently. You'll hear in a second. The soul sample, I can't remember the actual song it's called, but the sample is of a man singing, but at the beginning of this record, they've obviously sped it up, so it sounds like a woman, and I always just thought of it as a woman. Anyway, this is from their 2004 album, The Grind Date. Also, side note, if you haven't listened to much De La Soul recently, or ever before, until very recently, they were one of the very few artists that wasn't available on Spotify, mainly due to lots of the copyright issues that their music had because it was based on samples. But recently, all of their back catalogue has reappeared on streaming services. So if you like what you're about to hear, then maybe go check it out. But this is Much More by De La Soul, featuring a guy called Yummy. Don't know who that is, but yeah, let's have a listen. At Rage 300, there will be a recap to let you know what was 29 and 30. Don't worry, I'll be recapping every 5 songs.
No doubt, y'all care anymore about this hip hop, man? I mean,
so that's De La Soul. Probably one of the most noteworthy rap groups of the 90s, but obviously this is from the 2000s. But anyway, if you're just joining us, this is my countdown of my 30 favourite songs from the decade of the 2000s. So 2000 to 2009. That was number 27. Number 26. Somebody, Pingu fan in the chat, accidentally foreshadowed this because they mentioned that De La Soul featured on some tracks by the Gorillaz, and one of the tracks that De La Soul definitely featured on is this one, Feel Good Inc. by Gorillaz. Gorillaz, particularly the Demon Days album, which came out in 2005. I think it's one of the most amazing and progressive albums of the decade. It's quite amazing. I assume most of you know that Gorillaz is largely the solo project of Damien Albarn, who was the lead singer and songwriter of Blur. If there's anyone who didn't know that, let me know in the comments. Hello, Snooze King, welcome. And the thing is, because Blur never really broke America, Gorillaz quickly dwarfed the impact that Blur had. Even though Blur were one of the biggest artists in the UK at the time, they were like rivals with Oasis. They were sort of are just now like a footnote in many ways to Gorillaz. Gorillaz are largely a solo project of Damien Albarn's, but the defining feature of Gorillaz is that it's all about collaboration. So pretty much every Gorillaz track features different musicians, often from all sorts of different genres, making Gorillaz a very diverse group. I call them a group. They're a virtual group because they always have some sort of hip hop element, really, but I wouldn't call it hip hop. It really straddles lines between different styles to the point that it almost defies sort of being put in a box. It can't really be put in a box. But anyway, without much further ado, Feel Good Inc., probably the biggest hit they had, Gorillaz had. Absolutely amazing song. If you're listening out for where Damien Albarn is in this song, he sings the chorus, and he's usually the voice of the character 2D. And this record begins with the laughing of De La Soul, which we just listened to. Oops, I pressed the wrong button. Well, you might just got a little preview there. Anyway, Feel Good Inc. Demon Days, Snooze King is certainly worthy of a top 10 list, I agree with that. Great album. Dirty Harry, Clint Eastwood, great songs. The instrumentation, it's so unlike any other song I can think of. Feel Good Inc. Gorillaz. Not as much of a fan of what Gorillaz do nowadays, but in the early 2000s they were probably one of the most important artists that happened. Let's move on. So, as I accidentally clicked ahead a minute ago to, here is a run-through, recap even, of what we've already listened to. We started with In My Place by Coldplay, which was sort of our mandatory Coldplay pick. Travis, who kind of like Scottish Coldplay. Foles, De La Soul, and then Gorillaz, featuring De La Soul. That's what we've had so far. Obviously, we're going to keep climbing up until we get to what I believe to be the best song of the decade. Let's go on to number 25. Hate to say I told you so. Hate to say I told you so by The Hives, which came out in the year 2000, so only just scrapes into this list. Also, hello in the chat to Andre or Andres or someone, but they're speaking in Spanish and I don't know how to say that. Anyway, The Hives. The first artist on this list who isn't a British artist, I believe, apart from De La, who are Americans. These guys are from Sweden. One of the few artists I could name from Sweden. Anyway, Hate to Say I Told You So. Amazing example of the sort of garage rock revival that happened at the beginning of the 2000s, along with artists like The Strokes, The White Stripes. Amazing energy, amazing tune. Just bloody brilliant music. The thing is, unless I had been told, I would never have thought the Hives weren't speaking their native tongue. There's nothing about the way they sing in English or write in English that suggests that it's not their language.
Please gonna spread the disease because I wanna. Gonna call all the shots for the notes and the nods because I wanna.
Yeah, I think it's easy for an English speaker to forget how most Europeans and other nationalities speak more than one language. It's quite rare in England to meet someone who's bilingual because I guess we can just get away with not learning a foreign language. You can imagine if I didn't speak English, my YouTube channel could never be as popular as it is. There just wouldn't be enough people to watch it. But yeah, our first non-English or American artist on the list. Off the top of my head, I can't think if there's any others, but we'll find out. Hate to Say I Told You So by The Hives. We were talking about Blur earlier. For various reasons, we were talking about Blur. And here they are again. I was mentioning earlier that Damon Albarn, who is the guy in green there on the screen, is the man behind Gorillaz, but before he was the man behind Gorillaz, he was the man standing in front of Blur, who are one of my personal favourite bands. I saw them live at their comeback gig in Hyde Park. I can't remember what year that was, 2007 perhaps. It was the first time they played together in a long time, and it was one of the best gigs I've ever seen. And for me, they are the outright winners against Oasis in the battle of Britpop. Not to say that Oasis aren't good, but Blur, personally, I think they blow them out of the water. Anyway, this is one of the lesser known songs by Blur. Blur's output was largely in the 90s. They didn't have that many songs in the 2000s. Their only album that came out in the 2000s was called Think Tank, and for that album, Graham Coxon, the guitarist, who's the guy in yellow there, he had already left the band, so the Think Tank wasn't quite a true Blur record. And also at that time, Gorillaz had already started taking off, so Damien Albarn's interests and time were being distracted. But anyway, Music Is My Radar was released as a single to promote their Best Of collection, which is the album art we can see here. I think it's a really interesting piece of music. I think it's got some really interesting choices of instrumentation. I just want to see what people are saying about Oasis, because I just said a lot about Oasis, and I know Oasis can sometimes get people riled up. Somebody has mentioned, yep, never really liked Oasis. Give me Blur any day. Yeah. Yeah, so Oscar, you think you've only heard one song from Blur. This is the thing. And Richtoff, Oasis versus Blur, I'll let you have that. But anyway, the thing is with Blur, they didn't really break out of the UK anywhere near as much as Oasis did. Oasis were able to break America a bit more, to the point that obviously nowadays everyone sort of knows Wonderwall and some of the other ones by them. Blur's only real breakthrough song on an international level was Song 2, and the problem was that Song 2 was so drastically different from anything else they did that it didn't really act as a good way of promoting them as a band. And the reason, if in case you weren't aware, the reason that Song 2, which is the woohoo song, the reason that song is so different from the rest of Blur's output is that song began as a parody of Nirvana, of like Smells Like Teen Spirit, but then actually wound up being a hit single. But the rest of their music sounds far more similar to bands like the Kinks, to Blur, to the Beatles. Of course, Blur sounds like Blur. But anyway, let's have a listen to them. This is Music Is My Radar, one of the later but still really good songs by Blur. Hello, Ishi Bunny in the chat. I've heard 2 songs by Blur, but I wasn't alive in the 90s, early 2000s. My main exposure to Blur was my mum, who was a big fan of them, because I wasn't quite old enough to live through them, if you know what I mean. At the time, there was this thing called the Battle of Britpop, where Oasis and Blur, their record labels, purposefully released singles on the same day, so those songs would then go head to head in the charts to see who could get to number 1. And Blur actually won that. I think it was Blur's Country House versus Oasis's Roll With It, was it? Or some might say maybe it was Roll With It. But yeah, in the UK, the Blur Oasis rivalry was a big thing. You couldn't have heard of one without giving into the other. But I don't think that really translated outside of the UK. Yeah, Dave Rowntree, the pink looks a bit like that. I can assure you though that Dave Rowntree is infinitely cooler. So yeah, that's Blur. That's quite typical of their late career stuff, where it didn't fit into what you'd expect from Britpop anymore, but was still really good and really inventive. I don't know, and there's also the B-side to that track. Obviously, I'm not going to play it here right now, called Black Book, which is another really good song. Anyway, that was Music's My Radar. This is number 23. Actually, yeah, this is another example of a non-English or American artist. I was trying to remember whether there would be. Does anyone know where Sigur Rós are from? Let me see in the comments, in the chat, if anyone can identify where they're from. They're potentially one of the most famous artists, maybe the second most famous artist from this country. Iceland. Yeah. Snooze King got it. Oh, and Oscar got it too. And David Defender did as well. Lots of people did. But yeah, Iceland, beautiful country, beautiful music. I'd say Björk is probably the most famous artist from Iceland, but Sigur Rós are probably catching up with her, especially nowadays in the 21st century. They're well known for writing in a language that isn't really actually even Icelandic. It's kind of like a gobbledygook language, which is kind of why this song is called Gobbledygook. As far as I'm aware, a lot of the stuff they say a lot of the lyrics in their songs are just kind of there for the sound rather than the words themselves. But because they're Icelandic, you wouldn't even necessarily know unless you were someone who spoke that language. They fall into a genre that's often called post-rock, where it's got a lot of the sensibilities of rock music, as in like guitars, drums, keyboards, that sort of thing, but structurally doesn't really fit into a traditional rock song format, and often makes use of a lot more sort of cinematic instrumentation, like orchestras and ambient things. And anyway, yeah, I don't really know. When a genre is called post something, it's very left open to interpretation. But yeah, post-rock apparently. But anyway, Gobbledygook, Sigur Rós. Listen out at the beginning. There's a really good bit where the stereo is panning back and forth. I really love that bit. Sigur Rós, our first and only Icelandic artist on this list. But there you go, it's a small country. Number 22. This is a song called I Will Follow You Into the Dark by Def Cab for Cutie. Now, we were saying on the previous song, on Gobbledygook by Sigur Rós, how lyrics are only one aspect of music, and therefore you don't necessarily need to understand the lyrics to enjoy a piece of music. Even if the lyrics are in your native language, you could listen to your favourite song 100 times and never really absorb what the lyrics are about or what they're saying. But I don't think that's the case for this piece of music. I think this piece of music is actually very reliant on the lyrical themes, because musically it's quite a simple song. It's a simple chord progression, simple arrangement, but it's the lyrics and the idea and the story being told which makes the song. If anyone's not familiar with this song, the idea of the lyrics ultimately is exploring what happens after you die. And I don't know, obviously different people have different ideas about what happens after you die. But personally, I'm an atheist, but I was raised very religious. So I've kind of got this... I've got a bit of a nihilistic view on what happens after you die, and it's kind of quite scary but also quite intriguing, and I think this song really captures that in an emotional way, and the imagery is just amazing in the chorus. There's some fantastic lyrics, which hopefully, because I chose this version of the YouTube video, we'll be able to see the lyrics on screen. So This is also the only song I know by this band. Really, I think I've maybe listened to some of their other songs, but nothing really caught my ear. Probably should give them another go. Oscar's mentioning the band name Def Cab for Cutie. Yeah, I think Def Cab for Cutie is actually a reference to a song, like an old doo-wop era song about someone dying in a car crash, maybe. I think Def Cab for a cute girl, maybe. I don't know. I haven't listened to it for a while, but it's definitely inspired by a song. It's definitely a song title lifted and used as a band's name. Just having a look at what you guys are saying in the chat. Jen Sabor, thank you for joining the chat for the first time. But anyway, he blew his mind out of the car, yeah. Well, you might have seen my recent video about that. Anyway, let me play you this song. As I said, it's very lyric focused. So if you can, keep an eye on the lyrics and see what you think. Simple song. Just a beautiful sentiment. And almost like it catches, at least for me, the sentiment catches me off guard. Because the musician, sorry, just gonna deal with this cat. Because the instrumentation is so simple and like folk song-esque, but the lyric is so dark, and not dark in like a horrible way, but dark in like very bare and raw way. And this idea that if when you die, if you realize that there is no tunnel of light leading up to heaven, and heaven and hell have both decided to turn the no on and the no vacancy sign, then you'll be left just with like the dark. And it's just kind of terrifying, isn't it? But anyway, it's a great song, perfectly captures that emotion, and I love it. Let's move on. Something quite different. I'm sure you guys know this song. It's one of the most popular songs. Personally, I think the best song by this artist. I think it's his sort of magnum opus. Just a great example of Eminem's ability to tell story through his music. I often think that Eminem is a bit like listening to an audiobook, like a short audio play set to music, because the way that he raps and writes is very narrative based, and he raps so expressively with so much emotion that you feel like he's playing the characters in his story. And that coupled with the very atmospheric sample from Dido's which song is it? It's a Dido song. I can't remember which Dido song it is. Is it Thank You by Dido? It's a very just chilling song. And one that the message of this song I think has become more and more relevant since Eminem wrote it in the year 2000, with the rise of social media and influencers and what you might call a parasocial relationship, where a viewer feels like they know an influencer because they've spent so much time with them on their screen, and perhaps even spent time like interacting with them like you guys are right now with me. Bit ironic. But anyway, a parasocial relationship is where one person feels like they know the other, and the other person, the one that's in the position of power and influence, doesn't know the other person at all. And that's what Stan is. No, that's what Stan is about. It's cool that they were analysed. I can see someone in the comments saying that they analysed this in English class. I like that they would use this rather than necessarily analysing some poetry that you had never heard of. But yeah, over analysing something can sometimes take the joy out of it. I often have to not listen to songs that I've been analysing, not listen to them for a while, for the appeal to come back. But anyway, let Eminem tell the story.
Dear Slim, I wrote you, but you still ain't calling. I left my cell, my pager, and my home phone at the bottom. I sent 2 letters back in autumn, you must not have got them. There probably was a problem in the post office or something. Sometimes I scribble addresses too sloppy when I jot them. But anyways, what's been up, man? How's your daughter? My girlfriend's pregnant too, I'm about to be a father.
All of the, I don't know if you even noticed it, but all of the sound effects make it so much like an audio play. Like the sound of the rain, the sound of the pencil scratching on the letter, window wipers, the bridge and the water and that at the end. And also just Eminem's expression there, and like the way he was making Stan come alive there. Pretty amazing stuff.
Dear Stan, I meant to write you sooner, but I've just been busy. You said your girlfriend's pregnant now. How far along is she? Look, I'm really flattered you would call your daughter that. And here's an autograph for your brother. I wrote it on the starter cap. I'm sorry I didn't see you with the show. I must have missed you. Don't think I did that shit intentionally just to diss you. But what's the shit you said about you like to cut your wrist too? I say that shit just clowning, dog. Come on, how bitch you? You got some issues, Stan. I think you need some counseling to help your ass from bouncing off the walls when you get down some. And what's the shit about us meant to be together? That type of shit'll make me not want us to meet each other. I really think you and your girlfriend need each other, but maybe you just need to treat her better. I hope you get to read this letter. I just hope it reaches you in time before you hurt yourself. I think that you'll be doing just fine if you relax a little. I'm glad I inspire you, but Stan, why are you so mad? Try to understand that I do want you as a fan. I just don't want you to do some crazy shit. I seen this one shit on the news a couple weeks ago that made me sick. Some dude was drunk and drove his car over a bridge and had his girlfriend, and she was pregnant with his kid. And in the car they found a tape, but they didn't say who it was to. Come to think about it, his name was, it was you. Damn.
Yeah, pretty cool song. I really love the bit about Phil Collins and the In the Air Tonight. I don't know if you've heard that story before about how supposedly In the Air Tonight by Phil Collins is written about an experience where Phil Collins saw someone drowning in the lake and didn't save them or chose not to save them or something. Stan was kind of like relating the situation he was in to that, with Stan being the guy drowning and Eminem being Phil Collins stood at the side in a position of power where he could save him but still not choosing to save him. And that definitely sums up the parasocial relationship where the person, the Stan, feels like they're almost owed something by the influencer, by the whoever, because the influencer is in a position of power. So they could help them, they could give them what they want, but they don't, and therefore they feel like they've been wronged. But of course, an influencer can't help every single person that follows them, and they're not really, they shouldn't have to. But the great irony is that I'm pretty sure that story about Phil Collins and In the Air Tonight isn't even true. So it just adds another layer to the sort of delusion that Stan has. Anyway, that's enough of me breaking down that song. Let's move on. Here's a recap of what we've listened to so far. In My Place, Coldplay, Flowers in the Window, Travis, Two Steps Twice, Foals, Much More by De La Soul, Feel Good Inc. by Gorillaz, Hate to Say I Told You So by The Hives, Music Is My Radar by Blur, Gobbledygook by Sigur Rós, I Will Follow You Into the Dark, Def Cab for Cutie, and Stan by Eminem. That's the first 10 songs of this list. If you're just joining us, this is a list of my top 30 songs of the 2000s. So the year 2000 running to 2009. That was our first 10. We're running up, counting up to my favourite one. And here is number 20, which is, in the end, Linkin Park. Hybrid Theory, which is the album from which this is taken, is probably one of the most noteworthy albums of the decade. There's far more than just this song on there, which is worth listening to. And choosing one Linkin Park song was kind of difficult, but I really like the song. And it has a warm place in my heart as well, because my wedding band that I was in for 10 years, we used to play this, which you might be thinking, a wedding band playing In the End by Linkin Park, but actually the demographic of people getting married now is the age group is perfect for this song. And just seeing everyone rush to the dance floor for this, and when the chorus hits, it was just so fun playing this. This is one of my highlights of when we used to play. Anyway, Linkin Park are another example of a band who, a bit like Gorillaz, they started blending hip hop with other styles. In this case, namely rock and to a lesser extent electronic music. Gorillaz, they're kind of beyond compare with the way they blurred styles, but still, Linkin Park were really important in breaking down the barriers between rap and rock, because for the longest time they were considered very different styles of music, not just because of the kind of obvious color divide between the ethnicities of the people who were making rap and making rock, but also that rap has some very distinctive attributes to it that are just not found in any other types of music, including sampling, scratching, looping, and of course rapping itself. Anyway, let me stop chatting and let's start listening. This is In the End. Good. But yeah, Linkin Park, In the End. That's number 20 on the list. Now, the next artist is the White Stripes, who probably, I think most people would agree, are one of the most noteworthy artists of the decade. They, of course, were basically just a duo of Jack White on guitar and vocals and Meg White on drums. On their records, they actually did have more than just two instruments, but the aesthetic of them being a duo, and they did perform live as a duo. It fit into their very much back to basics, back to roots approach to rock music, going back to the blues, going back to this sort of rough and ready garage rock sound. There's lots of songs they could have chosen to put in this position, but this is a personal favourite White Stripes song for me, so I thought I'd go with this one. But if there's a different White Stripes song that you thought should go in this space, let me know. We're mentioning in the comments that they only really knew, well, some people only knew Seven Nation Army, which they are. White Stripes are definitely one of those bands where one of their songs completely dominates all of the others, and Seven Nation Army is that. That song has, particularly as the years have gone by and White Stripes have become less relevant, that song though has lived on and become something very, very different. The Seven Nation Army chant has almost become like a folk melody now, being like repurposed for all sorts of things. I know it's been used a lot as a football chant. Anyone in the UK will be familiar with when it was used to promote Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn. And actually, we used to play this in the same band I was telling you we played Linkin Park. We used to play this pub gig and we would play Seven Nation Army. And there was a period where people would start singing, "Oh, Jeremy Corbyn," to the bass line of that song. Yeah, how music can transcend medium. Anyway, drastically different song. Number 18 is 9 Crimes by Damien Rice. Damien Rice is a singer-songwriter who quite elusively kind of came along, was quite popular, and then suddenly kind of disappeared again. I think he actually went and became a farmer in maybe Tuscany or something, and then he did come back and do another album, but I didn't like it that much. But anyway, 9 Crimes is from his second album, which was called 9. Really beautifully melancholic song, and based around, unlike most of his songs, it's based around a piano, just a simple piano thing. Most of his songs are more like acoustic guitar. Damien Rice has lots of good songs, by the way. If you don't know about him, Cannonball is a good one. The Blower's Daughter is another one. But this is my favourite, 9 Crimes. Really, I think it's just such an emotional lyrical performance. Just a song dripping in emotion, but not in a over-the-top way. Let's listen to it. Oh no, I did the wrong thing. Okay, that's weird. I don't know why that happened. That happened earlier. Anyone who was paying attention there got a quick preview of the next one. I'm trying to press the play button. Okay, it worked. It's worked. I like how muted this piano is. It almost sounds like it's been like digitally degraded.
Leave me out with the waste. This is not what I do. It's the wrong kind of place to be thinking of you. It's the wrong time for some excuse, and is that alright? Yeah. Give my gun away when it's loaded, that alright? Yeah. If you don't shoot it, how am I supposed to hold it? That alright? Yeah.
This is drastically different from the previous thing, but you know, still fantastic. This is Decode by Paramore. Paramore, also one of those bands. When I say also, I'm kind of comparing to when I talked about Coldplay, I think. Yeah. They're also Paramore, also one of those bands who I think sometimes are seen as a bit too mainstream to be cool, maybe. A bit too poppy to be cool. I don't know if they ever really were poppy. They are nowadays in their kind of revamped way. But back then they were still a rock band. But anyway, I really like Paramore. I think they're a great band, and I think this is their best song. And this song wasn't even like a single. Well, it was a single, but it wasn't a proper album track. It was released as a bonus track on this album, which was called what was this album called? Brand New Eyes, was it called? I can't remember. It's the one with the butterfly on it. It's the same album that had Ignorance on it, which was a big song. But anyway, this song, I think the reason it wasn't on the album outright was because it was saved to be a Twilight soundtrack song. Now, I know what everyone thinks of Twilight, but the thing is with Twilight is they actually had really good soundtrack. Radiohead, 15 Step, that was on the Twilight soundtrack. Muse, Supermassive Black Hole, that was on the Twilight soundtrack. It was good. It was a good soundtrack. And Decode is another example of that. Although I have gone to an effort here to not actually play the official music video of Decode because it uses a lot of clips from Twilight. And I don't know. I want you guys to appreciate the song for the song and not get distracted by the fact that it was in a slightly questionable film franchise. This is a great song. It makes me want to play drums. Let's have a listen to it. And oh, hello, Bread Baron. Welcome to the chat. Let me know if there's another Paramore song as well that you think would have filled this spot nicely. Yeah, Anthony in the comments there. Welcome to the chat. You're saying that they supported Paramore supported Taylor Swift, which is a good example of how they straddle cool music and less cool music. Anyway. The drumming in Paramore though. Classic artist, Red Hot Chili Peppers. This is Red Hot Chili Peppers are most at home in the 90s. They did actually start making music in the 80s, but I think the 90s is when they're most closely thought to, that's when they did the main output. But of course, they did have a lot of great albums in the 2000s, namely By the Way, which featured songs like Can't Stop, and Stadium Arcadium, which was a double album and features songs like Danny California. Now, I actually I knew that I wanted Red Hot Chili Peppers in this list. The Chili's are one of my favourite bands. But I actually did a bit of toing and throwing about which Chili song from the 2000s to include in this list. But I came to the conclusion of Danny California. I know that some people think it's not as, maybe as interesting or exciting maybe as some of the earlier songs they did, and that at this point in their career that they're kind of really dragging out the fact that they're from California in their music, and that they're making that very apparent. But I think this is a great song, and I can't remember which song it is. There's a Tom Petty song which is very similar to this song, so if you're a fan of Tom Petty, you might recognise this. But anyway, this is Danny California by the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Last Dance with Mary Jane. Yes, thank you, Ted, in the comments. That's the Last Dance by Mary Jane. Last Dance with Mary Jane is the Tom Petty song, which this song, Down California, is probably.
When you pick the panorama, she never knew that there was anything more than gold. What in the world does your company take me for? Black bandana, sweet Louisiana, robbing on a bank in the state of Indiana. She's a runner, rebel and a stunner. On the merry way saying, baby, what you gonna? Looking down the barrel of a hot metal 45. Just another way to survive. California, rest in peace. Simultaneous release.
I saw someone mentioning before Lee's bass playing being the most definitive of the decade, and I agree. I think Flea isn't necessarily the most technical bassist, but he is highly influential, and he plays bass with the ego of the guitarist.
She's a lover, baby, and a fighter. Should have seen it coming when it got a little brighter. With the name like
such a tune, such a band, amazing band. Everything about that band is amazing. Anyway, that's Red Hot Chili Peppers, and I think that gives us another recap. Yes, here we are. So we are now at the halfway through point, and we have been going for just over an hour and a half. So this is shaping up to be fairly consistent with last time, where it was 3 hours long. I think maybe I'm chatting more this time. But anyway, we've had all sorts of artists. Who are you anticipating being in the second half? We've had some stipulations, predictions even of In Rainbows, Radiohead, which I think you won't be disappointed. Obviously, there were a few artists at the beginning who were on the screen. If you were hanging around for that, you would have seen the picture of them. So there's a few of them who we haven't actually seen yet. So if you can remember those guys, then they are still in store. Muse is one of them. Muse will be appearing. But let's crack on. Let's get into the next one, which is MGMT. I know you guys were mentioning MGMT earlier because you were talking about how on songs like Time to Pretend and Kids and Electric Feel, they were kind of actively trying to take the mick out of pop music and actually wound up being big pop hits. MGMT's debut album, Oracular Spectacular, is one of my favourite albums ever. Not just because it's a great album. It is a great album, but I also listened to it at a very crucial point in my life. I mentioned this before in a video on my channel, but I'll mention it again now. When I was 16, just about to go to sixth form, my family moved house, and for the first time I got my own bedroom, which was a big thing for me because as a musician, having a space where you can just make music and be creative is really valuable. And what I did when we first got the house is I spent 2 days decorating the room by covering the walls in posters and cutouts from magazines and stuff. And I did it. I had a CD player in the room, and I had 2 CDs, but I only listened to one of them. And it was Oracular Spectacular MGMT, and I think I listened to it on a loop at least 12 times over those 2 days. Anyway, Time to Pretend is the opening track. It's a brilliant song. It's about ultimately wanting to be rock stars and pop stars. And if you were watching last week's stream about my favourite songs from the 2010s, I featured the song Congratulations by MGMT, which is kind of the sequel to this song. Sounds like a core memory. Yeah, it is. But anyway, let's have a listen to this. Time to Pretend, MGMT.
feeling rough, I'm feeling wrong in the time of my life. Let's make some music, make some money, find some models for wives. I'll move to Paris, shoot some heroin and fuck with the stars. You man the island and the cocaine and the elegant cars. This is our
Time to Pretend, MGMT. What a tune. Let's move on though to another song that came out the same year. This is Fleet Foxes, and the song is Mykonos, which is actually off an EP, so it's a lesser known Fleet Foxes song. I discovered it. This is how old I am. This is how old the song is. I discovered this song from one of those CDs that comes attached to the front of a magazine. I don't know if you guys probably remember that. But I think both the idea of a CD and a magazine are both now redundant. But anyway, I used to be a loyal subscriber to a magazine called Q, which was a music magazine. And they would sometimes, if you were lucky, do a CD that came with the magazine, and it would have all sorts of songs in it. And it was a really good way of discovering new music back then, when I didn't download stuff then. Of course, I didn't stream either. So CDs was the way I found music. And it was on one of those CDs that I discovered, Mykonos by Fleet Foxes. I was already familiar with Fleet Foxes' debut album, which had come out at this point. I think that came out in 2007. But I didn't know this song. And this song is one of my favourite songs of theirs. Much like many Fleet Foxes songs, it's got quite an unusual structure, and I like that. It's almost like 2 episodes, this song. And it has that trademark Fleet Foxes kind of folky, baroque pop, heavily vocal harmonies, heavily reverberated sound. Let's listen to it. Free song of the week. I forgot about that. When there was like a free song on iTunes. I used to subscribe to a podcast back then, which was, the podcast was literally just a free song. So I would download the podcast and then just put it on my iPod and keep it as a song. So here's like when the mood change happens in the song.
Brother, you don't need to turn me away. I was waiting down at the ancient gate. You go wherever you go today.
It's basically a different song. Different feel, different tempo. But I just love how they made it one big song. It's great.
I remember how they took you down as the winter turned the meadow round. You go wherever you go today. You go today. When I'm walking, brother, don't you forget. It ain't often
Mykonos, Fleet Foxes. Brilliant tune from a brilliant band. If you don't know Fleet Foxes, I definitely recommend starting with their first album, which is a self-titled album called Fleet Foxes. They've got a lot of great songs. And here's another great song. This is number 13 on my list. It's called Do You Realise by the Flaming Lips. It's one of the only songs really that I like by this band. Like they do have other great songs, but this one is a standout tune. It's got a wonderful key change in it. It's got some wonderful lyrics in it. I particularly love... There's a lyric in it which I particularly love, which is about how the sun never really goes down. It's just an illusion caused by the earth turning round. And of course, that lyric makes perfect sense from a real physical point of view, because yes, the sun going down is just an illusion, and there is no such thing as a sunset. But it's a perfect metaphor, isn't it? Like, you don't have to worry about the end of things, the end of your life, the end of things that you love, because things don't really end. It's just an illusion caused by the world going round, by time passing. Amazing lyric. When people come up with lyrics like that, metaphors like that, do they realise how good of a metaphor they've come up with? Because that is just perfect. It's listen out for that lyric. But anyway, this is the Flaming Lips with Do You Realise. The second chorus, which is the final chorus, it dips down, which is just a really good reflective moment, I think, to bring the theme of the song round. Yeah, excellent song. Okay, this is an artist that you might not have been expecting to see on this list. Mark Knopfler is most well known for being the lead singer, guitarist, frontman of Dire Straits. So of course, Sultans of Swing. That's Mark Knopfler, or Money for Nothing. That's Mark Knopfler. But he did have a really good solo career as well. And the highlight to his solo career for me is his album Sailing to Philadelphia, which came out in the year 2000. So it just about scrapes into this list. So although it's very much an outlier to everything else on this list, I had to include it. This song is beautiful, and it's quite a unique subject matter. It's about the Mason-Dixon line, which is a line, well, any Americans watching will know this better than I do, but it's a line in America which is considered the border between the north of the United States and the south of the United States, and I believe it was quite intrinsic to the Civil War. It's called the Mason-Dixon line because it was originally mapped by two cartographers from England who had the names Mason and Dixon, and this song tells their story about these two fairly modest English people who came from good old England and came to wild America in like the frontier times where it was still the colonies and quite a wild place to go. So it tells that story beautifully. It's got a beautiful kind of country Americana sound to it. It's such a relaxed, warm sound in this song. And of course, what can make a song by Mark Knopfler better? Have a verse sung by James Taylor, who is obviously a fantastic artist who will probably appear in a later list that I will make for the greatest songs of the 1970s. But anyway, this is Mark Knopfler and James Taylor singing Sailing to Philadelphia. Mark Knopfler is also one of those guitarists who has such a voice on the instrument, you can almost just know it's him playing.
I am Jeremiah Dixon, I am a Geordie boy. Glass of wine with you, sir, and the ladies I'll enjoy. Old Durham and Northumberland is measured up by my own hand. It was my fate from birth to make my mark upon the earth. He calls me Charlie Mason, stargazer am I. It seems that I was born to chart the evening sky. They'd cut me out for baking bread, but I had other dreams instead. This baker's boy from the West Country
I think it's what makes this song quite relaxing, at least to me, is that it kind of only has one dynamic. And I think for a lot of songs that would be quite a bad thing, but for this song it just means that we're kind of just in this place, we're just sat in this place in quite a reflective way. Like if you think about the drums in this song, it's just pretty much the entire song, it's just been that rushes on the snare, chugging along, train track rhythm. Yeah, it's quite meditative because it just stays in one place. It doesn't take you necessarily on a journey. But yeah, anyway, that was the Black Sheep, the wild card of the list, Sailing to Philadelphia by Mark Knopfler, who by all rights belongs in the 70s or 80s. But here he is, just scraping into the 2000s with Sailing to Philadelphia. If you're just joining us now, we're now 2 hours into me counting down my 30 favourite songs of the 2000s, so the decade running from the year 2000 to 2009. We are now approaching some of my absolute favourites. If you have only just joined us, there will be a recap in 2 songs' time, so you'll be able to see what you missed. Okay. On the previous stream that I did of this type, the one where I counted down my favourite songs of the 2010s rather than the 2000s, number 11 on that list was Ben Folds, but that time he was with his band, the Ben Folds 5. This is just him on his own. This was his debut solo album, Rockin' the Suburbs, and this is my favourite song from it, The Luckiest. Now, I think if you know the song, some people think of this song, I think, in a sort of cheesy way. Maybe they think it's a little bit cheesy. And I guess if you don't listen closely to the lyrics, I think it could be perceived as cheesy, particularly if you just listen to the chorus. But what is so good about the song is the story it tells in the lyrics, and about how the people we meet in our life and the important people to us that we meet in our life, there's so many little things that could have happened differently and we would have never met them. And that thought is quite terrifying, really, if you think about how close you could have come to meeting or not meeting certain people who would define your life. That's what this song's about how lucky he was to meet this person, considering that they could have, by all rights, been born in completely different eras or on different streets or just never met each other. From that description, you might be able to see why this song can sometimes be considered cheesy, but I think some of the most earnest and heartfelt lyrics and expression ride the line of cheesiness, and it's keeping it in the side of honesty and authenticity, which keeps it from being cheesy, I think. And I think this song perfectly does that. So this is The Luckiest by Ben Folds.
Don't get many things right the first time. In fact, I am told that a lot. Now I know all the wrong turns, the stumbles and falls brought me here. Where was I before the day that I first saw you? That I am the luckiest. I love you more than I am.
This is also an example of a song that is in quite a loose sense of timing. It's not to a strict tempo, which is quite common in like piano and vocal songs, because
Next door,
the singer can just like
there's an
guide the
old
tempo.
man who lived to his 90s and one day passed away in his sleep. And his wife, she stayed for a couple of days and passed away. I'm sorry, I know that's a strange way to tell you that I know we belong, that I know that I
Like those moments there where the tempo is allowed to fall away. Something you just can't really do in like when you've got drums, or particularly when you're playing to a grid. It's basically impossible when you're playing to a grid like a click track. But it's an opportunity to just inject a bit more emotion. It's what you call rubato, where the tempo is... Rubato means stolen or robbed time. So it's like you've stolen time from somewhere else and pulled it here, and it just means that the tempo is fluctuating around. It's a very organic thing to do, but something that doesn't get done very often in pop music. Anyway, that's possibly the most somber song in the list. Here's a recap. So if you've only just joined us, here's what you missed. We've had all sorts of stuff so far, but we're into the last 10. So there are certainly some artists that have been mentioned in the chat who haven't appeared yet, so they could be appearing very soon, but we still have 10 entire artists to get through, most of which you guys have not managed to successfully speculate on. There's been mentions of Radiohead, that could happen. There's been mentions of Regina Spektor, that could happen. There's been mentions of Muse, and that could happen. But that's only 3, and there's 10. So what's next? Well, this is an artist that, personally, I only got into about 4 years ago. But of course, they were making music long before that. They were an artist I was familiar with for a long time, but never really gave attention to. Probably because they're quite electronic, and electronic wasn't really the style that I was naturally drawn to. But really, they're not a true electronic... Well, they are electronic artists, but they're not like EDM or whatever. They are very much straddling the worlds of electronic and like alternative music, alternative rock, that sort of thing. I don't know. I liken them a bit to like the Velvet Underground. My mind's gone blank. What's the Velvet Underground singer called? The guy who did Perfect Day. You guys will know. Perfect Day. Walk on the Wild Side. Lou Reed. Yeah, thank you. Geek X Machina. Yes, Lou Reed. I don't know how I forgot that. Anyway, that's what I'm trying to say. LCD Sound System reminds me of Lou Reed, but with like electronic stuff. Anyway, Someone Great is another great song from the point of view of the lyrics. It perfectly captures the time when you find out that someone's died, and the experience of that, and like how you know, and like I don't know if you know, maybe you guys probably have been through something similar to this, where you know someone is dying, they're on the way out. So anytime you get a phone call or a message, you always think for a second, is this it? It's a weird thing, isn't it? Anyway, that's what this song is about. And I kind of came across this song shortly after someone close to me had passed away. So it kind of perfectly summed up what I was experiencing. Beautiful song. I'm saying beautiful song about so many of these songs, but the thing is, there's a reason they're on the top list. Let's have a listen to this. Someone Great, LCD. Meta moment of like, and it keeps coming and it keeps coming, and the song is just all this big build. It keeps coming until it stops, just like the lyric and just like the metaphor it was trying to get. But yeah, I don't know that. I can see someone in the comments, time without an something, mentioning that there's some other great songs on this album which might have made the cut, and that's true. I think for me though, this song lyrically just hits, and it's not enough to just have a great lyric. It's placing that lyric into a context where it really hits home the mood and emotion of it, and I think this song just nails that. Anyway, we're now into the last 10 songs. This is number 9, Going to a Town by Rufus Wainwright. I think many people first got exposed to Rufus Wainwright, at least for me, this was the case, by his cover of Hallelujah by Leonard Cohen, and it is one of the best covers out there, which I think is a big thing to say for a song that's been covered a gazillion times. Confusingly, a lot of people will remember Hallelujah by Rufus Wainwright as the version that was on the Shrek soundtrack, but actually in the Shrek film, it's a different version. But on the soundtrack album, they couldn't release that version, so they got Rufus Wainwright to do another cover of it, and they used that because Rufus Wainwright was signed to DreamWorks record label. Did you know that DreamWorks have a record label? I didn't know that until I found this out. And yes, I didn't think I'd be talking about Shrek tonight, but I am. I guess, it's the 2000s. You've got to talk about Shrek. Anyway, Going to a Town is a really beautiful song. Rufus Wainwright is a fantastic songwriter. I had the privilege of seeing him live earlier this year, I think it was, or last year. But brilliant artist. And this song is about leaving America because he's, as he will soon tell you, he's tired of America. And he wants to go somewhere where they've already been let down, namely Europe, namely Germany, namely somewhere that was very much let down and has now got past that. It's an interesting theme for a song, I thought. I want to going to a town. What's the lyric? Going to a town that's already been burnt down. Going to a place that's already been disgraced. It's an interesting concept. Anyway, let me stop talking about it and let's start. Oh no! Listening to it. I did that happen sometimes. Did anyone see that? Yeah, you're gonna see it, aren't you? Anyway, that's the next one. Sometimes when I press the play button on this YouTube thing, it thinks I want to go to the next slide, but I don't. I want to listen to Going to a Town. Going to a Town, Rufus Wainwright. Here we are.
I'm going to a town that has already been burnt down. I'm going to a place that has already been disgraced. I'm gonna see some folks who have already been let down. I'm so tired of America. I'm gonna make it up for all of the Sunday times. I'm gonna make it up for all of the nursery rhymes that never really seem to want to tell the truth. I'm so tired of you, America, making my own way home. Ain't gonna be alone. I got a life to lead, America. I got a life to lead. Tell me, do you really think you go to hell for having love? Tell me.
Something that adds a bit more lyrical weight, thematic weight to this, is that Rufus Wainwright is gay, and considering that this was a little while ago, 2007, and America, you can see why he's singing about, do you really think you go to hell for having love?
I really need to know. I may just never see you again, or might as well. You took advantage of a world that loved you well. I'm going to a town that has already been burnt down. I'm so tired of you, America, making my own way home. Ain't gonna be alone. I got a life to live.
Japan was here. chat. And yeah, I think I'm no historian, but the 2000s hasn't been good to America so far. There's been good moments, but the trend is perhaps not in a good direction. But that's just one outsider's opinion. People are mentioning New York, I love you, but New York, I love you, but you're bringing me down. LCD Sound System. That is another really good song. Really good song. So I saw in the chat somebody was likening the singing on that, Rufus's singing, to Muse. And I can totally hear what you mean. But it takes me on to the next song, which some of you might have got a sneak preview of because I accidentally clicked the thing. Knights of Sidonia, Muse, from their probably their most successful album, Black Holes and Revelations, which is a great album. And the last album, in my opinion, that was truly great. After that, Muse began their descent into almost like self-parody nowadays. But anyway, Black Holes and Revelations was at the peak of Muse, at the peak of their powers, and it's the most proggy thing they did, and still got to number 10 in the charts. It was wild. Fun fact about this song: Knights of Sidonia is inspired by a song called Telstar, which was an instrumental hit in the early 60s. One of the first examples of a synthesizer being used in a hit record. Now, Telstar was by a band called the Tornadoes, and one of the members of the Tornadoes, maybe the guitarist, was Matt Bellamy's dad. So Matt Bellamy in this song is kind of paying homage to his dad's big moment, his dad's big song. If you've not heard Telstar, by the way, check it out. It's if anything, it's just a very historically important song. But yeah, just having a look over here at what people are saying in the chat. Yeah, so this is Knights of Sidonia. It's a bloody great song. I mentioned Regina Spektor earlier, and here she is, number 7, Samson. This song tells an amazing story. I know I'm going along on the lyrical thing in this, and that wasn't intentional, but I've just happened to find lots of songs that have brilliant storytelling in them, brilliant lyrics, and they've made the list. But Samson is a song that Regina Spektor actually originally recorded a bit earlier in her career, before she was signed, and you can still listen to that version. It's a lot slower, but this is the main version. And what's so brilliant about the song is I don't think anyone had done this metaphor before, correct me if I'm wrong, but you know, the story of Samson and Delilah. Samson being this character who had this hair, this long beautiful hair, and he had these superhuman abilities and strength from his hair, but then Delilah cuts his hair and he loses all of his power, likening that to the fact that people going through chemotherapy lose their hair and also simultaneously lose their power is an amazing metaphor, and that's what this song is about. Beautiful song. I keep saying beautiful song. Let's just listen to it. Yeah, beautiful song. Absolutely beautiful. Yeah, I know, right? It's a real tearjerker. It's one of those songs where the imagery and metaphor is there, but the truth of the situation they're telling is also just peeking through enough that you can realise what they're really saying. And it's those sort of songs, I think, which hit you hardest, where someone can't quite bring themselves to tell you in absolute terms how awful things are. They have to use a metaphor. Anyway, very much getting into the last few songs here. And if anybody was paying attention at the very beginning of this, there was a grid on the screen of different artists, and one of the artists on there was Green Day. So Green Day are one of those artists where I do consider them in like some of my top artists, favorite artists. But there's one particular moment in their career which stands out for me, and I think stands out for a lot of people, and that's American Idiot. That album is something else. It's one of the best albums of the 2000s, I would say. It's definitely the peak of their career. And it's full of amazing moments. Jesus of Suburbia being one of them. This is a 9-minute song. Very episodic, like Bohemian Rhapsody. It goes through all these different phases, never really returning to what came before, telling a story. If anyone's seen the American Idiot musical that was made, this is one of the best moments in it, because this song just lends itself so well to musical. I saw it a few years ago. When I first heard there was going to be an American Idiot musical, I was quite skeptical. I thought that sounded a bit weird, maybe a bit, Green Day started as a punk band, right? And now they got a musical, but it does make sense. It is a good musical. And also, I say Green Day started as a punk band. I think this song was the moment that they very much left everything that punk traditionally is behind, because they've got all the sensibilities here of the Beatles, of Queen, of those sort of artists, of the sort of artists that punk was initially rebelling against. But they tie in those sensibilities with some of the aesthetics and ideas of punk. I think it's a great moment. Bloody brilliant tune. What a mental tune. Jesus of Suburbia, Green Day, by far the longest song on this list. Our final recap before the final 5. Well done if you're still watching and you've been watching from the beginning. To anybody who hasn't been watching the whole thing, which is probably many of you, here are the songs we've covered. We've been going now for almost 3 hours, but we're into the last 5. There is one very noteworthy artist, at least to me, who hasn't appeared yet, and that's Radiohead. Now, don't forget, I did mention at the beginning that certain artists can appear more than once if they're from different albums, if the song I choose is from different albums. And to be honest, I did actually want to include Radiohead 3 times on this list, but I just thought that would be a bit much. So I went with this for number 5, Mixomatosis, which is possibly the first Radiohead song I actually ever heard, because I had a game in 2004 called FIFA 2004. In fact, I think I didn't actually get it to like 2006, because I think I got it later. But anyway, there was anyone who's not English or doesn't know about FIFA. FIFA is a football game. It comes out every single year. It's virtually the same game every year, but you rebuy it because you want it to be up to date. But it has music from that year on it, and although it was FIFA 2004. It actually comes out the year before, so people can buy it for Christmas. So it came out in 2003. So it had a Mixomatosis on it, and I remember noticing that song. There was various songs on that game, many good songs, but this one really stood out, and was one of the first songs that got me onto Radiohead, which, as many of you will know, Radiohead are one of my absolute favourite bands of all time. Mixomatosis, yes, Mixomatosis was on FIFA. I know, crazy, right? But there are many good songs on this album. Mixomatosis, though, the fuzzy, synthy texture, which just comes in right at the beginning, no introduction, is amazing. It's beautiful. Mixomatosis. Oxymatosis, Radiohead. Number 5 on my list of the top 30 songs of the 2000s. Year 2000 running to 2009. We're now into very much the last few songs. I can't actually remember what number 4 is on the list, so I'm going to about to find out. Oh, yes. Sufjan Stevens is another artist who I didn't encounter until long after this album actually came out. I probably didn't discover Sufjan Stevens until 2018, maybe? 2017, I imagine. I have this album on vinyl, and I actually bought it when I was in Los Angeles. I bought it from Amoeba, which is a really big record shop in California. Let me know if anyone's been to Amoeba. Lockdown 08. You have a good eye. Yeah, so this album is quite wild, really. It's very much a concept album. It's folk, but also prog, maybe? I don't know. But Chicago, this song here, is one of the more accessible songs from it. Sufjan Stevens actually he claimed to plan to be recording an album for every state in America, so 50 albums. And he did Illinois, and he did Michigan. Is Michigan a state? It is a state, isn't it? I don't know.
In my mind, you came to take us. All things go to recreate us. All things go.
Sufjan Stevens, Chicago, number 4 on my list. We're into the final 3, and somebody, who was it, with a very keen eye, spotted the blurred red album art of number 3 on this list. And they're right. They got it right. Just from a blurred red album art. But I guess given the context, they kind of could guess what it was, and it is No One Knows by Queens of the Stone Age. Queens of the Stone Age are a band who I didn't really get into properly until more recently. I only really knew this song, which I think is maybe the case for a lot of people. This is their song that kind of stands out. But this is a great song. It's just a downright excellent rock song with a great riff and just a great journey altogether. I don't have much to say about this one. I just want to listen to it. No One Knows by Queens of the Stone Age. Oh yeah, and that is Dave Grohl on the drums, by the way.
We get some rules to follow. Gift that you give to me. No one knows.
And they cut that little radio bit at the end. I have a love-hate relationship with, because it felt weird that they cut it off, but it's also a little bit of an annoying moment. But it makes sense if you listen to the whole album. The radio bit makes sense. But anyway, there's 2 left. What do you guys think is number 2? Because I think you guys have worked out what could be number 1. But what's number 2 on the list? Any guesses? I actually, in this moment, can't remember, which is weird, considering I made this list. But I guess I get to enjoy it with you. No clue. Yeah, I know, right? Me neither. Let's find out. Oh, yeah. How can I forget these things? When You Were Young, The Killers. The Killers, particularly their first two albums, have written some really good songs. They're a great band. Definitely one of the best bands of the decade. Largely, I would say my favourite album by them is actually Hot Fuss, but this song takes the award for my favourite song by them. It's just such an anthem, and it's a good karaoke song as well. If you ever karaoke with me. I'm not going to karaoke now. When You Were Young by The Killers was number 2. Number 1, a lot of you have speculated it's a song by Radiohead from the In Rainbows album, and that is correct. And the song from In Rainbows that it is Nude. I mentioned earlier with the other Radiohead song that I discovered it because of a video game. I discovered the first Radiohead song I ever heard was Mixomatosis, and I discovered it because of FIFA 2004, of all things. This was perhaps the second Radiohead song I was ever exposed to, because it was the... Do you know a TV show called Skins? It was on Channel 4. It was like a teen drama thing, kind of a notorious thing in the UK. I don't know if it ever reached outside of the UK. Anyway, on the DVD menu of Skins, Series 1 and 2, was the song Nude by Radiohead. And I loved the song so much just from hearing it on the DVD menu. It just shows how destined I was to become a Radiohead fan. That even though I hadn't been introduced to them yet by the age of 14, the two songs I'd heard through random little reasons I'd become obsessed with. And it was because of this song that I then discovered In Rainbows, the album, and I also then discovered OK Computer and all of the rest, and my love for Radiohead began. But Nude is such a beautiful song. It's such a warm and sort of deep instrumentation and arrangement. I don't know if you guys know, but this song was effectively in development for about 10 years. Radiohead actually wrote it, I think, around the time of OK Computer, so around 1997. It took about 10 years of refining it, playing it live, rethinking it, ditching it, bringing it back to get to this version of Nude. And I'm glad they waited, because this song and this album in its entirety is where Radiohead managed to cultivate a whole new version of their sound, and it's just so lovely. It's a beautiful piece of music. Bonus points for anybody who can tell me what time signature this song is in. No, that keeps happening. Let me repeat that. Bonus points for anybody who can tell me what time signature. No, Nude by... And with that, we end my list. My 30 favourite songs from the 2000s, from the year 2000 spanning to 2009. Thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. And have a good evening. See you later.